We shall begin. All right, so the last couple of weeks, I have gone into depth in some of just the basic stats that I'm watching. And the biggest thing that I want to go, I guess, just point out right now is, as I know I'm probably sound like a broken record at this point, but I mean, all economics are kind of built on the basis of supply and demand, right? And for framework, for those that are new this week, the way we look at our supply and demand in real estate is how many months worth of inventory do you have? And what that means is if no new properties came on the market, how based on the current absorption rate, how quickly would we run out of inventory? So, and that's what determines how many months worth of inventory we have. So anything between about 6 and 7 months is considered a balanced market. Anything under 6 months worth of inventory is considered a seller's market. Obviously, the less inventory, the more of a seller's market. And anything over 7 months is a buyer's market. Too much supply, not enough demand. So I break it out into price points because obviously not every price point is the same game out there. And the median sales price is projected to be right around $400,000 this year. And it's been hovering around that point, a little bit lower in April, but, or excuse me, in March. So we have under 400,000, we have less than 1 month's worth of inventory. And this is single family homes in Salt Lake County. So still very, very little inventory. Between 400 and 600,000, we have less than 2 months, same with 6 to 750. And then over $1 million in all of Salt Lake County last year only represented 1% of our market. So even though our income in Salt Lake County is going up in every year, in Salt Lake County, we're still, $1 million is a very small piece of our marketplace. But 5 months worth of inventory is very low inventory for that price point. We've actually been hovering in like the 7 or 8 months worth of inventory. And there's lots of reasons I think that is, with jumbo loans being restricted and things of that nature. But looking year over year, when we kind of hit the precipice of all of this in the second week of March, our inventory went down 25%. From that week last year. And again, why is that, or what's the story behind it? Well, one can guess a lot of that has to do with a lot of the off-market properties that immediately went in place. If you have any sort of immunocompromised system, or for whatever the reason, you just were not comfortable with people coming through your home, you took your house off the market when this all hit. And there's lots of other reasons people hit the pause button as well. So our inventory dropped 25% the second week of March. As of today, we're still down 11% from this day over last year. We're trending upward, definitely, but we're still down significantly. The interesting thing about that, though, is the demand piece of that. So the supply, right, is still down 11%, but under contracts, we're only down 2% from last year. So while our inventory is down, we're still basically at the same amount of, or number of homes going under contract, and therefore our absorption rate is greater and our inventory is less. Hopefully that makes sense. So we don't have all of April's numbers yet. Yes, it's yesterday was the last day of the month, but there's a trickle effect in how things get reported. But as of yesterday, last night, the median sales price in April was $400,000 for single family homes in Salt Lake County, which was a 5% increase. We've been watching these stats each week, just kind of the basics of the market. And for all housing types in Salt Lake County, we've continued the trend of about 50% of our sales. So we're gonna, my thought is we're gonna get to the end of Q2 and really see a pretty significant dip in the number of sales that we've had. As you can see, over the last 4 weeks, we've had roughly half of the number of homes selling, right? 205 last week, whereas this week last year was 487. The week before was 149 versus 368, 188 versus 418. So we've been hovering about the 50% mark. However, look at this. We are still hitting about 100% on average of what the list price to the sold price was. Last year it was 98%. And our average days on market still only 8 days. And again, this is Salt Lake County, all housing types. This is, as you know by now, one of my favorite stats to watch because it shows behavior in the market. So what's happening with our showing activity? Well, again, last week we saw this huge jump, right? We had lost essentially half of our showing activity and we've almost gained it all back. We were down from this week last year, 18%, but significantly better than the bottom, which was 42% loss of showing activity. So that's really good. As you know, I've been watching price adjustments to really look at, are we seeing a fire sale? How many people are slashing prices? And we have yet to hit over less than half of 1%. So last week, for the last 7 days, there were 365 active new homes, and there were only 16 price adjustments. So less than 0.5% for last week. So that's great news. This is what I was just talking about. You can see the trend lines here. This purple line is under contract. We saw this dip where we lost, what was it, 25%, but then now we're right here. Trending towards last year. So that's great news. We mentioned last week, how many cancellations are we seeing? How many people were backing out of their contracts? And we had seen a huge jump that first week that we, everything hit. Obviously fear was dictating a lot of behaviors. The MLS is only reporting this statistic every 2 weeks. So it's still at the same data we had last week. So we'll look at that next week. But my guess, just being out in the marketplace, is it's still hovering down around this normal mark. So that's the really quick update. Just being out in the marketplace with buyers over the last several weeks, I can tell you just from a anecdotal type of review, consumer confidence is coming back. And it's interesting, a lot of the conversations, I keep saying, I don't like to predict, right? I'm just going to be driven by the data and make data-driven decisions. But the Q3 and Q4, we're going to see this pent-up demand come back. And it's interesting, we have, so the NAR, the National Association of Realtors, does a consumer survey every quarter. They survey tens of thousands of buyers across the country to get a pulse on like what are consumers feeling out in the marketplace. And something crazy like 98% of millennials want to be a homeowner, but their behaviors are very different than generations in the past. The average age is in the 30s instead of in the 20s in terms of becoming a homeowner. They're just waiting longer to become homeowners. And a lot of their behaviors around that had to do with, enjoying experiences and travel and other things rather than kind of almost this nomadic lifestyle, enjoying traveling and not being pinned down to one household or whatever. Well, I have a feeling, based on conversations that I continue to have, that a lot of that's going to change. The cabin fever, so to speak, feeling of being cooped up in a 700 square foot apartment doesn't feel so great when you don't have all those activities and travel that you're used to. So again, there's lots of reasons that I think we're going to see some of that pent up demand come in the fall, but I think we're going to see a lot of it. So anyway, does anybody have any specific questions about the market right now? No. Okay, good. Now you get to not listen to me and listen to Brad Manuel, which I'm so excited about. So for those of you that don't know, Brad Manuel is actually my brother-in-law. And how long ago, Brad, did you take the mPEAK course to become certified?
It was April of 2018.
Okay. So 2 years ago, and just as of yesterday, actually, is now a graduate from the University of Utah with his BS in psychology. Go Utes! So exciting. So he is an mPEAK certified coach, and Brad, I'll let you explain exactly what that is. But really, as I was going through and trying to decide and brainstorming with Jenny and Maddie, and what are people what's actually going to be of value for people when we do these Zoom calls weekly? Obviously, mental health has been at the top of my mind lately. Just in watching, the devastation and the isolation and human behavior. We're not supposed to be isolated as humans. And anyway, so I'm super excited that Brad's joining us and going to share some of his intellect and what he's learned to actually have really practical things that we can walk away with today to help us all stay really mentally fit during this time. So Brad, take it away.
Cool. Well, thank you. Let's see here. I'm going to, can you share, screen share? Thanks for having me. It's good to see everybody on. And there were,
sorry. Hold on.
Right. There were a couple of things that I thought were interesting that just seemed to tie in with what I'm about to talk about. And it is that me or you, Alicia?
Oh, that's me. Are you able to share?
I am, if you let me.
Oh, fantastic. I'll stop sharing then and you take it over.
Yeah, cool. It says you've disabled it.
Oh, shoot.
So one of the things as we're getting this worked out, I think that's still you.
It is. I'll just.
Okay. So you can go to the first one. That'd be great. So as you were talking, Alicia, I think it's interesting that you hit the nail on the head. Consumer confidence really seems, it's like a dictator of the market. And as I look at those trends, obviously you said it, people become fearful. And really it's what we're all kind of dealing with right now in terms of change or disruptions in our lives and the stress that is created whenever something is either we decide to take on in terms of we're setting out a goal, or we're kind of thrust over the edge of a cliff. And with COVID-19, the entire world was kind of thrust into this figure it out, adapt really quick. And so as I asked Alicia kind of what her goals were for this call, it was basically just to hopefully provide some tools for us to continue to adapt with more resilience and just get us through these times of constant disruption, constant stressors. And so as I was thinking about it, I was thinking about my particular situation. I just finished up, as Alicia said, with my last semester at the U. And for months, my wife was traveling with her job. I think she did close to, or somewhere around 82 flights a year last year. And so she was constantly gone. My son was in Washington in college. And when the pandemic happened, the pause button was pushed. and my wife was basically grounded at home. My son was sent home from school. And while I didn't think much of it, I was really happy that the family was coming together and I was going to see my wife more. I didn't realize until probably 2 to 3 weeks in how much stress that was creating in my own life. All the routines that I had that were my kind of, this is how I'm going to go through my 5 classes, this is how I'm going to manage my day, etc., were completely disrupted. And it took me a couple of weeks to really understand what was going on. And so with that, I think, you can talk about stress. And I think when we hear about stress, the first thing that we most of us think of is that it's a negative thing. But the reality is we don't grow without stress. And so the key with this is to recognize when stress becomes bad. And if you can go to that next slide, Alicia. So if you don't know the difference, this is just some quick visuals. But eustress is good stress. This is when we're seeking out a goal, when we've decided we're going to pursue something, and or whenever we've been challenged in a way that we've seen the challenge ahead of us, we know that our skills fit that demand, and we can go for it. But a lot of times, what we don't know is when we dip over into distress, and sometimes we just get knocked upside the head with distress, right? That just happens, and we know when that is. But if you can go to that next slide, this next slide is talking about the human function curve. And when you look at our performance, and really as a coach, I look at stress, I look at our goals in life. Literally everything should be viewed in terms of how are we performing. And I'm gonna venture to say that if you're on this call, you want to perform, and you want to perform better in whatever you do, whether it's real estate, whether it's being a student, or whether it's being a mom or a dad, etc. And so in this human function curve, you got performance level on the left and stress response on the right. You can see as performance level increases, it gradually goes up in this eustress state when it's healthy stress. But there is a point in which we're going to dip over, and you can see how our performance level just drops off. And from a science standpoint, we can point to almost any activity, any industry, any career, and know that we get into this point of we've gone too far. And then it becomes bad, and that becomes chronic stress. You can go to the next one. And I just want to highlight a couple of these slides just because I think that it becomes important when we can start associating these symptoms in our body with stress. And so chronic stress is that slow drip of cortisol. It's that ongoing, everyday, something's just back in the back of my mind and it's not quite taken care of yet, and it's just constant. But when that slow drip happens, it doesn't allow our body to recover the way it needs to. And so whether it's headaches, heartburn, you notice rapid breathing, we have risk of heart attack, pounding heart, all these different things, in our parasympathetic system, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, weakened immune system, which obviously is huge in everything that we're dealing with right now. When you consider how many ways can I boost my immune system, and it's tied into insomnia. And you've probably heard it from a few different sources, but sleep is so important in these cases. And then finally, increased depression. And you can go to the next slide, and we'll jump to a few others. So fertility problems, all this is related to chronic stress. Erectile dysfunction, missed periods, stomach aches, low sex drive, tense muscles. So if you can point to all those different things, or think about at any point in your life how those things have manifest, and maybe they've been persistent, residual, you can probably point somewhere in your life that there's some stress going on. And so ultimately what we want to do is, the key is, how do we figure out when we've gone from that good stress to the bad stress? And that link happens with a concept called interoception. And interoception is just, it's body awareness, it's internal awareness. is becoming and having an increased awareness with that internal landscape of your body. And the more that you're able to do that, science shows that you're going to develop resilience. You're going to become more resilient because you're going to be more aware of what's going on in your body. You'll be able to sense those cues and those triggers earlier on. And then with some other tools, you can start to learn how to keep from going over that line or pull yourself back into a less stressful or no stress state. So that said, I want to do a couple things, but give you guys a couple of tools. Mindfulness is all the buzz now, and I don't know how much you know or you're familiar with it. In a lot of cases, a lot of folks are practicing now, which is a really good thing because there's mountains and mountains of evidence to show how mindfulness is can help us from a stress standpoint. And in fact, one of the most preeminent and evidence-based practices or programs out there is called mindfulness-based stress reduction out of University of Massachusetts. And most, if not all, mindfulness training programs, et cetera, are kind of rooted in that. And so let's do something real. I want to practice. I like to create as much experience as possible, but if everyone would, what we're going to do is I'm going to put a timer on, and I'm just going to ask you for 60 seconds, just 60 seconds, to just sit and be silent. And go. Okay. I'm always amazed what a minute of silence will do. I want you to think about what that experience was like. Maybe awkward, a full 60 seconds of silence on Zoom. But real quick, we're going to do it again. But this time, when we do it, I want you to be really curious. I want you to really kind of, even from your head to your toe, kind of sense in and feel what's going on in your body, maybe the position you're sitting in, but really, really take note of everything. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if you're like me, or if you're like most, what you may have noticed if you were thinking about what happened the first time versus the second time, if you had to make a list of all the things you noticed, the second list is probably double in terms of length. But what's interesting, and I do it each time, the first time we did 60 seconds, and the second time we only spent 30 seconds. But simply put, it goes back to the idea that, if you want to go back to that screen, Alicia, it goes, this is really the description of mindfulness. And what you did that second time was you paid attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So with curiosity, you paused for a minute and you were really focused about the experience you were having. You were purposeful and you were in that moment. And simply put, that's mindfulness. Now, mindfulness, there's a lot more to it. There's tons of tools that help develop interoceptive awareness, to develop your focus, your attention, increase your resilience. And there's just a plethora of benefits for mindfulness. But really what you want is just to grab that initial idea that mindfulness is just that, simply just paying attention in the moment and being there, just in that moment without any judgment, no matter what the experience is. And sometimes that non-judgmental part is the toughest. The second tool that I want to give you guys is pre-performance routines. And if you don't do it, then I'm going to encourage you to think about this. And if you have a piece of paper, I'm actually going to ask you to write these questions down. And what I would want to see would be great is that whatever you have going on the hour after this, whenever this call is done, that next hour, apply these questions to that hour, just that next hour. And I started doing this with my kids, literally probably like 10 years ago. I was in a garage working with them on their baseball and softball swings. And literally, it was my way of giving them something to be more confident. So you talked about fear, doubt, and unbelief with the market. Well, from a performance standpoint, if you're a 10-year-old and you have to stand in the batter's box, you're scared. And it's like performing at anything that you do. And so what I taught my kids, and it's now evolved into this pre-performance routine, but it started with setting your mind, creating an intention about what you're planning to do. And it could be in that immediate moment, or it could be over the course of the next hour, or the course of the next 6 months. But ultimately, what is it that you want to accomplish? And actually see it happen in your mind. Be able to visualize that experience. And the next thing with them, I said, set your body. I wanted them to really understand their foundation, their body when they got in the batter's box. But whether it's the batter's box, or it was me sitting down and doing an hour of homework, or it's connecting with your clients, whatever it is, all the tools, resources, and conditions that are needed that you need in place to achieve what you want to achieve in that next hour, gather it all up, get it all in place, so that you don't have to get up and down, you're not distracted, you're eliminating all the noise that could interfere with what you have planned. And then finally, it's setting your focus. And it's just having that discipline to be able to come back to the actual thing that you're focused on over and over again. And ultimately, that's where that mindfulness comes in, because that's what it teaches you. It teaches you that you're going to be distracted throughout the day. Science says we're distracted over half of our day, 50% of our time, we're mind wandering. If we can exercise that muscle of that discipline of focus, attention, and concentration, that every time our mind wanders, we bring it back to our focal point, our anchor, then you're going to get stronger and stronger and be able to focus and ultimately perform at the highest level that you can perform at.
Hey, Brad.
So, yes.
So one thing that my business coach kind of early on as this all started to begin was really just trying to hone in on is the WIN acronym. What's important now? Because, I'm at home, my kids are here, I'm normally in my office, in my zone during the day, and that all shifted. And I am a very easily distracted person, and I would end like 4 hours of work being totally exhausted and not feel like I got anything done, and super frustrated by that. So what you're talking about right now, is essentially what she kept trying to establish is what is important now, and then forget the rest of it, put those blinders on almost and set that focus and continually ask yourself that question. And it might be extra minute right now. Like what's important right now might be like literally a 30-second, like what right now, right? But anyway, so I so hear what you're saying, and I've had to really strongly work on that.
No, and that's the thing. It's really having just the framework, right? I mean, there's pre-performance routines. I think who does the 5 4 3 2 1, the
Mel
countdown?
Robbins.
Mel Robbins. The idea of having these cues to trigger you to take this next action, this next step. It's really a matter of, and you talk about putting the blinders on. Over and over again, I would hear my kids or my kids' coaches tell them, just don't think about it. Don't think about the stress. And it's like, nice try. Good luck not thinking about everything that could happen, how I could fail. And so I knew that that wasn't the option. What you needed to do was you needed to give them an alternative. You needed to give them a plan in which they could say, oh, I need to do this now, and then this, and then this. And then when you do that, that puts the blinders on. That keeps the distractions out. And so as you play around with this, as you exercise that muscle with this concept of set your mind, set your foundation, set your focus, you can apply it to almost anything that you're going to do in life. And ultimately, I think the true benefit of it, or when you're really going to get something out of it, I believe, is when you tie these two tools together. When you can sink in and you can start developing your own mindfulness practice, when you can exercise your ability simply like with an awareness of breath practice. Awareness of breath is just literally just an anchor for you to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes a day just coming back to the breath. Just getting really quiet and you deciding for the next 10, 15 minutes, I'm just going to breathe. And every time my mind wanders, I'm going to see it wander. I'm going to notice it. And I'm going to go, nope, I'm going to come back to the breath without judgment, right? Because that's when we get into this perfectionism idea, like, oh, I'm messing this up. Just stopping for 5 minutes, just practicing is doing this right. And that's how easy mindfulness is. And that's really kind of the paradox. It's one of those things that's so simple, but it's so extremely valuable when we can apply it in terms of our performance and our goals in life. So that said, those two tools, I want to open it up for any other questions, comments, but what I do want to leave you guys with is just some tools. So if you're thinking about or haven't dug into mindfulness on a whole, we are offering an online performance-based workshop. So we're taking the mPEAK program, which is Mindful Performance Enhancement, Awareness and Knowledge. That's the program out of UCSD. The neuroscientists down there, along with their Center for Mindfulness, they created a program and they applied it to the US BMX Olympic team. And now that is one of the preeminent performance-based mindfulness programs in the country. And so what we're doing is, obviously, because everybody's transitioning and having to adapt, we're teaching these skills, the same program, in an online format, in a 2.5 day intensive format over a weekend on July 10th and 12th. On our website, rsgperformance.com, we've got free practices on there under the tools tab. And those are those awareness of breath, a body scan. The body scan, to be able to lie down 15, 20 minutes and go from your head to your toes or from your toes to your head, that increases that muscle. It builds that muscle of interoceptive awareness. So like I said, that's the point where you go from eustress to distress. And we want to exercise and develop that skill set so we know that we've gone too far. Body scans or these tools will help that. A couple other things. We do a free weekly community practice on Thursday nights on Zoom from 7 to 8 p.m. If you let us know if you're interested, we can add you to that list. And then I'd encourage the meditation apps that are out there. Insight Timer is great. Thousands of practitioners, and you can find pretty much any type of meditation specific to you. Headspace is a great app. 10% Happier. My wife recommends that one. It's a cost for the 10% Happier app, but it's great great teachings and meditations to be able to exercise these practices. But I think you're recording this, and this stuff can be available, so
Yep.
you don't necessarily have to write it down.
And we do a recap to each. Hang on, sorry, 1 second.
What I will do is, if anybody does have any questions after that, I'd love to address those.
A question that I have for you, Brad, is when you talk about kind of the tipping point between eustress and distress, what type of awareness to our body, like when do you know? Like, how do you become aware of when you're tipping that? Because I would assume it's almost, you almost don't know it's happening until you're too far, right? So how do you know?
Well, you're right. So if I go back to the example of my wife coming home, my son coming home, I found out probably too late, but I was able to self-correct. But I literally, I was in an argument with my wife one day. We're out on a walk where we're supposed to be relaxed, but it was like I was processing this stuff through. And as I started to reflect back, I could recognize that I start getting tension through my neck. My shoulders get tight. I even sometimes in my stomach, it doesn't feel right. I can feel the stress coming on, and everybody, they deal with stress or they hold it in different parts of their body. So really what it is, it's trial and error. And it's starting with that idea of, let's stop and notice, just being mindful of it. Again, without judgment. You don't need to notice it and go, oh my gosh, I got to change it, right? And then try to do all these things to be a better person and not be stressful. But it's making the decision that I'm going to start to be aware. And when you just go, oh, I see when I went over because I lashed out at this person, or I responded in a way that I didn't feel good about, then it's real kind of easy to go, what was the trigger? I can see that was building up over the previous 2 hours. And it started with that conversation or that interaction. So again, start with just the first awareness, that first point of awareness, and then just notice, where do you feel it in your body, right? Because everybody's different. And when you can start pausing for 2 or 3 breaths and just being reflective and go, what is it that got me here? That's when you're on the road to being mindful. And that's when you're really starting to cultivate that interoceptive awareness that's going to help you better navigate, so that when you start getting closer to that point, or even when you slightly go over, at least you don't slide all the way to the other end, right? You can catch yourself and go, nope, I need to pull myself back. I need to still drive. I need to still get all this stuff done in my life, but I got to do it with balance, and I got to do it with some compassion. Starts with compassion for yourself.
Yeah, totally. I have a couple other questions, but I want to give everybody a chance. Does anybody else have any questions for Brad? Don't be shy.
Okay, I guess I do. So when you, like, if you notice yourself get past that point and then you look at it and you're mindful and you recognize like the things going on in your body, how do you like pull yourself back? If that makes sense. Like, are there ways that you recommend for pulling yourself back from that so that you can recenter?
Yes. And again, I don't want to be kind of really broad. However, everything that you're saying makes sense in that we all have these stressors, but everybody's going to be a little bit different. If I looked at how I respond to a couple of those situations, my first response was, I'm going for a run. All right. I stopped everything and I'm like, I'm going for a walk. I'm going for a run. I needed to release off some steam. But it could be anything. It could be, I'm going to stop for a minute and I'm going to go sit in my car for 10 minutes and I'm going to put on some chill music. I'm going to get quiet. I'm going to just feel my breath for a few minutes. And really, as you learn the science and the benefits of mindfulness, that's where it gets really, really good, because mindfulness ultimately is about self-regulation. It's about understanding that we have an autonomic nervous system that controls everything in our body, our heart rate, blood pressure, blood flow, all these different things. But when you know that your sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight, it's like whenever you're ticked off, you've been triggered, and you just want to grab somebody by the throat. That's that sympathetic. And sometimes that's great, right? If you're being chased by a buffalo, you want to run. You need all that. You need that adrenaline in your legs so you can get moving. But in life, you don't want to have to react like that. And that's where we get caught up in. So what mindfulness does, it gives us the tools to engage the parasympathetic system. Gives us the tools to turn all of our energy and get that parasympathetic going. And the parasympathetic is not gonna, it's gonna basically disengage the sympathetic. The two of them, that's the rest and digest. The two of them are opposites. And so if we understand that, if we can see that, we can sense that, we know that our sympathetic nervous system has been triggered, we, with mindfulness, can have the tools to engage that parasympathetic and pull ourselves back.
You know, if I can give you what I think to be a really real life example of what you've just talked about. Some of you know, we've hit kind of a precipice with our 16-year-old, and just the realities of managing the difficulties, the natural difficulties, and just some unique things that are going on. And I'm a crier for sure. I'm a like wear my emotions on my sleeve person. But I'm not a cry every day by any stretch of the imagination. And there was a week time where I cried every day at the dumbest things. That I just felt like the tears lived right here. And I was set off just at the dumbest things. And I realized that what I definitely am not is somebody who holds back and harbors emotion. I let it go. I tell people how I feel. I express myself often. What you see is what you get. And I had been because of just paralyzed of not knowing how to approach this parenting dynamic that's happening and all the things, I realized I was holding back. And my tears were like these quiet, the lump in your throat tears, like I'm hiding it. Does that make sense? I was holding it back from really actually releasing, which is why it sat right here. And on Monday night, my son and I collided, and I spent an hour in a ball in my closet, ugly crying, loud, ugly crying. And ever since, I physically feel lighter. I physically feel like I had allowed the slow drip. I turned on the faucet. I let it go. It was real ugly. And now, and now I can move on. But, you talk about just going for a run and releasing that. For whatever the reason, I just felt like I was like trying to suppress. And so it was bubbling over. And as soon as I just let that go, man, I feel like a different person this week.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I think that just that back to that last statement that I made in regards to compassion, that's really what that is you allowing yourself that space to be emotional, right? Not judging it, not saying, no, that's not me. I don't do that. But it was allowing yourself the compassion first to be able to have that release. And when you do that, when you can give yourself compassion first, not be so judgmental, not be such a perfectionist with, am I a good parent? Am I doing this right? Am I a good worker? Am I a good entrepreneur? Am I good whatever? You can stop for a second and you can just extend yourself compassion first. That is the only time you have compassion to extend to somebody else.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions? Thoughts? You want to just tell us about your ugly cry in the closet? Like I just exposed myself. Okay.
No, this has been really helpful. Thank you so much, Brad, for all of the information. I've really enjoyed this.
You're welcome. I have too. Thank you.
Yeah, ditto. And as you guys know, we send out the kind of recap and the recording and the resources on Monday following these calls. And one thing I'm going to add in there, you talked about just a lot of the science behind what you're talking about. Yale is offering a free course online right now. It's a 10-week course. I mean, you can do it at whatever pace you want, but there's 10 weeks of instruction and learning. And it's called Science of Wellbeing. And a lot of what you're talking about, I feel like I've just gained so many tools, and it like you're talking, it's the awareness, the ability to just go, oh, there's that lump, like, and understanding what that is. So I'm going to add that to the resources. I encourage anybody who wants to kind of dive in a little bit more to build these resources, because yes, everything's kind of heightened at the moment in this crisis, this pandemic that our world is in right now. But it's not unique that we need to, like, we always need to be mentally aware and have the tools to keep our our emotional IQ, right, at a really high level. And then there's another book, and if there's any books or resources, Brad, that you want to suggest, I would love that as well. There's a book that I just ordered called Permission to Feel. And it's really the science behind identifying and being able to articulate the actual emotion that we're feeling. Because there's all these like sub emotions, or like on the surface what's coming out. But if we don't know how to, and when are we taught that? I don't know of any school or elementary through high school or even college, unless that's your focus, that teaches us emotional IQ and really how to be aware of what emotions we're actually feeling, so that we can actually pinpoint and address what's actually going on. So anyway, yeah. Those are a couple of resources I found helpful.
Yeah, I can recommend a ton of books, but regarding the emotion, just being able to note those, it's hugely impactful to be able to have the tools. And that's another mindfulness practice that you can find on our website. It's called mental noting, but it's and it's also called open awareness. But it's really just a practice of hearing, noticing all the sounds that are around you, and just labeling it as hearing. It's something that you're doing, right? And so when you go, oh, hearing, oh, smelling, oh, thinking, there's a thought, and you can just label it as a thought. That's all it is. Or an emotion, right? Sadness. I see it. It's there. I feel sad. You don't have to identify with it. You don't have to attach to it, cling to it, hold on to it. Sometimes if you need to, if you just need to be sad, be sad. But a lot of times, if we can just note that feeling, that emotion, or that experience, then again, that's going back to that increased self-awareness, increased self-regulation. And when it comes down to when we're pinched in life, when we want to respond the right way rather than react, that's when it becomes hugely valuable.
Cool. Thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Well, sweet. Jen, do you want to let us know how many, so every week, continuing the spirit of supporting small business, man, some of my dear friends and clients just had to announce that the business that they opened just a short year and a half or so ago, Creek Tea downtown, they're not going to make it out. They're not going to make it back from this, and are going to have to just permanently shut down. And it's just, it really hit close to home. I mean, this whole time I've been trying my best to continue to support small business, but that hit home. Like, there are so many people. Some clients of mine own a nail salon, and they're all at home just waiting, and it just hits home so much. So we're going to continue to support small business throughout this challenging time. So we're going to give away a $25 gift card to your choice of local. It needs to be a local small business place. So Jenny, what numbers are we choosing from this week?
1 through 6.
Okay, so Brad, will you choose a number 1 through 6? 4.
4 is Patrick.
Awesome. Patrick.
Way to go.
Hey.
Patrick is actually just went under contract on a new home yesterday. So excited for you. Which local business, if you don't know of one right off the top of your head, that's okay. You can let me know, but do you know of one that you would like a gift card to?
Yeah, I think we usually support a little local sushi place right next to us. But yeah, I can send you the name of it and everything here
Sweet.
soon. So
Okay, awesome. I'll get that to you soon. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a really good weekend. I think the weather's going to be awesome, so enjoy some sunshine. We're going to celebrate Brad and his graduation from the U. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
So have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.